The elevator stopped between floors at 10:47 p.m. That was the first thing I noticed, the time glowing faintly on my phone screen before the signal disappeared. The second thing was the silence. Not the normal kind you get in elevators, where you can still hear the cables humming or feel the vibration under your feet. This silence felt deliberate, thick, like it was pressing inward, squeezing the air out of the small metal box. The screen above the doors went completely black, as if someone had turned it off from the outside. The buttons stayed lit, their soft white glow reflected endlessly in the mirrored walls. My own reflection looked unfamiliar, slightly delayed, like it was thinking before copying my movements. I pressed the emergency call button and waited. Nothing answered. No static, no reassuring voice, not even a mechanical click. Just silence, heavy and complete, wrapping itself around my thoughts. For the first time, I had the uncomfortable feeling that the elevator wasn't broken. It was simply waiting. I leaned back against the mirror and forced myself to breathe slowly. This was a modern office building. New, safe. Things like this didn't just happen. Someone would notice. Someone always noticed. I told myself that again and again until the elevator suddenly jerked beneath my feet. It started moving, not up, not down. There was no sensation of rising or falling, no pressure change in my ears. Just motion, endless, smooth motion. The walls vibrated faintly, as if the elevator was gliding through something thicker than air. I watched the dark screen, waiting for numbers to appear, counting seconds instead. 5, 10, 15. My stomach tightened as the movement continued far longer than it should have. By 30 seconds, I stopped counting. Whatever system normally decided where elevators went clearly wasn't in control anymore. Or maybe it never had been. The idea settled in my mind quietly, and once it did, it refused to leave. The elevator slowed, then stopped with unsettling smoothness. The doors slid open without a sound. No chime, no announcement, just darkness giving way to something worse. A corridor stretched out in front of me. Concrete walls, bare and cold. A low ceiling lined with fluorescent lights that flickered out of sync, creating uneven shadows that shifted when I wasn't looking directly at them. There were no windows, no exit signs, no decorations, just a long hallway that felt unfinished, like a thought that never reached its conclusion. I stepped closer and noticed the sign mounted above the elevator doors. Simple metal, clean letters, floor 29. I stared at it, waiting for my brain to correct the obvious mistake. The building had 28 floors. I knew that. I had been there for months. Yet the sign didn't change. It didn't glitch or fade. It simply existed, solid and unquestionable, as if it had always been there. And I was the one who was wrong. Behind me, the elevator made a soft chime, a polite sound, almost encouraging, like it was asking me to decide. For a moment I hesitated, torn between staying inside the familiar metal box or stepping into the corridor that felt too empty to be real. I stepped out. The doors closed immediately. I spun around and pressed the call button again. Then again. Nothing happened. The elevator didn't respond. It didn't even acknowledge me. The mirrored surface reflected only the hallway now, as if I had never been inside at all. The corridor swallowed every sound I made. My breathing felt loud in my chest, yet it seemed to vanish a few steps away from me. The further I stood from the elevator, the more certain I became that it wasn't coming back. Whatever choice I had just made, it felt permanent in a way I couldn't explain. The first door along the corridor was unlocked. Inside was an office space, but something about it felt wrong immediately. The desks were placed too close together, leaving barely enough room to walk between them. Every computer monitor was turned on, each displaying the same empty desktop. No icons, no taskbar, no cursor, just blank digital space. A clock hung on the far wall. I watched the second hand move and realized it was ticking backward. In one of the chairs sat a man in a suit. He was facing away from me, perfectly still. I cleared my throat and spoke before I could stop myself. "Excuse me?" He turned his head slowly. His face wasn't blank. It was incomplete, like a memory that hadn't finished loading. Features suggested eyes and a mouth, but nothing was fully defined. When he spoke, his voice sounded old, stretched thin by repetition. "You're late," he said calmly. "Late for what?" I asked, my voice barely steady. The man stood up with unnatural slowness, as if standing was something he had forgotten how to do. "Everyone is," he replied. "That's why there's so much room here." The lights flickered sharply, plunging the office into darkness for a split second. When they came back on, the chair was empty. The man was gone, as if he had never existed at all. Further down the corridor, another door stood open. Inside, a woman sat at a desk, typing rapidly on a keyboard. Her posture was stiff, focused. The computer screen in front of her was completely black. "What are you doing?" I asked. She didn't look up. Her fingers never stopped moving. "Answering," she said quietly. "Who?" She paused, then slowly turned her head toward me. "Those who still think they can leave." I backed away from the room and walked faster, fighting the urge to run. That was when I saw the stairwell door at the end of the corridor. The paint was chipped, the handle worn smooth. A warning sign was bolted to the metal. "Service exit. Do not use." I opened it anyway. The stairwell was old, concrete, and narrow, with identical landings repeating downward. There were no floor numbers, no windows, just steps and shadows. I started descending, counting each step to keep myself grounded. At 50, my legs began to ache. At 100, my breathing grew uneven. At 200, a realization settled in that made my chest tighten. I wasn't going down. I was going deeper. That's when I heard footsteps. Not above me. Not below me. Somewhere close enough to match my pace. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I took a step backward. They stepped forward. Panic surged through me, sharp and sudden. I ran. My feet pounded against the concrete stairs, echoing wildly. Yet the other steps never grew louder or quieter. They stayed perfectly synchronized, like a reflection. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I knew with absolute certainty that if I did, I wouldn't see a stranger. I would see myself running just a step behind, copying every movement, waiting for the moment I slowed down. The stairwell ended at a single metal door. A faded label was fixed to it. "Last floor." I laughed, the sound sharp and unsteady. When I opened the door, I found myself back inside the elevator. The same mirrors, the same buttons. But now there was one more. It glowed softly. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy security footage from inside the elevator. I watched myself standing there earlier that night, checking my phone, pressing the emergency call button. The timestamp read 10:46 p.m. The footage didn't stop. I saw myself freeze, standing unnaturally still. Then my head lifted slowly. On the screen, my eyes met the camera's lens, staring straight through it, as if looking directly at me. The screen went black. The elevator moved again. This time, it stopped normally. The doors opened to the first-floor lobby. Bright lights, voices, people walking past as if nothing had happened. A security guard asked if I was okay. He said I'd only been gone for a minute. My watch still read 10:47 p.m. I left without answering. I don't use elevators anymore if I can avoid them. But sometimes, when I'm alone in one, I catch my reflection in the mirror and notice something strange. For just a second, a button lights up. A button that shouldn't exist. And the elevator takes a little longer than it should to stop.